But let's get Samir Arora of Helios Capital into this discussion as well. Samir, hi, good morning. Does that perversely work against emerging markets like India? Because now that developed markets like the US are doing better, do you see money move into developed markets versus emerging markets in the first half of 2016?
No, not at all. In fact, I am a very simple guy. So I just remember what happened last time when the US rates were hiked. US rate, Fed Reserve raised hikes 17 times in 2 years and a few months between 2004 and 2006. Do you remember what happened in India and other markets at that time? So, this first quarter% hike suddenly making people move from emerging markets to developed markets as if we did not know that the US economy was doing at least this well. They have not said it's doing very well, they are doing it's okay, which broadly the whole world knew. And the US market anyway has been doing very well and deserves to do well. But I don't think this makes people move from emerging to developed markets. As I said, 17 hikes didn't change it when things turned in any individual market or as a group in emerging markets. So I don't think this is matter.
Okay, Samir, I take your point that last time when the Fed hiked rates, we actually had one of our biggest bull markets. But this time, do you think things are a bit different? For our markets, there are domestic problems which have been well documented. There's a perception building up that not much has changed between, say, UPA 2 and NDA. You've seen not much progress in GST, Parliament, logjam. Do you think that will continue to be a bigger trigger for the market in terms of, capping the gains?
That has already happened, and I don't think that will happen anymore. As you said yourself, it is well documented. If it is said that this government had announced last week that we are privatizing the airports in India, how would you have reacted to that? The poor guys can't even announce to you what they have done. Effectively, they've handed or privatized Ahmedabad and Jaipur airports and given them to Changi. But because of the environment in which we operate, we can't even come out and say things. The government cannot even come out and say that how they have cut subsidy, where is the food bill. They can't say all these things, all the things which we took as negative when they were announced by the UPA government, that these are very bad, these will blow out fiscal budget. But when this government has actually, in a sense, basically reversed all those things, they can't openly come and tell you. But the markets are not going to work just because somebody says it or not. They can see that there are massive changes in this government. Also, many things that we said a few months ago that what the government has done has not come or reflected into somebody's, not necessarily a corporate's bottom line, but into some change on the ground. I think that is happening in nearly every sector. For example, when this state SEB restructuring happened, even I thought that it would take months and years for some states to agree, and I met some government guys who said maybe Rajasthan will be the first one and it will take 6 months. It's like some 10, 12 have already agreed. Similarly, when this insurance FDI increase was happening, I was criticizing, saying 6 months have passed and nobody has been given approval. Suddenly 5, 7 guys have already got approval and maybe the transaction is already over. In every sphere, now you can see change. The only reason why people are still crying is because those corporates are still crying. For how many years did we say that diesel vehicles should be taxed? Not in those days because of pollution, but because diesel used to be subsidized. Now, obviously the auto lobby fought and said no, and for 5 years, I think for 5 years, I would have been saying it on CNBC 3-4 years ago. Not at that time thinking of pollution, but thinking of the fact that diesel is subsidized. Now, if somebody gets banned, if something happens, obviously guys, tomorrow you'll see some negative noise from India. But the overall change is significant, and I think markets are...
No, so Samir, for a viewer who's watching you right now, and with this Fed uncertainty out of the way, what would you advise him to do?
No, before that, let's go to saying that the US, let's do more on the US Fed just because it's a US Fed related day. Then, people say that there'll be a 1% hike, let's say over a year, as they expect on this thing over 4 quarters, say 25 basis point a year. So what will people do in US bonds first, tell me? The current US 10-year is giving you 2%, 2.3%. So if they think that after 1 year, your bank rate will be 1.5%, who will buy US bonds? So should people move from US bonds to US equities and US bonds to emerging markets? Or should they worry about India because in some other country oil is falling? India is today, I think, in a great place because finally there are going to be changes on the ground, and where there are no changes, those guys deserve to have no changes in their life.
No, I take your point entirely that Indian macros have improved, and the government can take a lot of credit for that. Basically we have not seen the earnings trajectory tick up. That's really everyone's grouse. Do you see that improving? I assume that any extraordinary growth in Indian indices will be contingent on earnings improving.
Madam, just sit back and relax, and it will automatically happen because of a thing called base effect. Let's look at big picture. Exports have been down 12 months in a row, and I think it was 1 year ago exactly this month or the previous month that there was the last increase of 7% or something like that. Now tell me, if you just do at this pace when you've been falling 15-20% on exports, suddenly it'll happen that you will be now comparing yourself with a year or a month 1 year ago, which itself was down a lot, and suddenly it will big improvement. The same thing is going to happen in India across sectors. If for 2 years we've had a drought and now there's a slight rain, hopefully, suddenly or year on that will look okay, or people will look beyond it. But on other sectors, if you look at our denominator, currently 40% of earnings may be coming through commodity sector, export-oriented sectors, or these material, metal-type companies which have, their earnings have fallen 80-90%, or maybe they made losses.
Yep.
Their life does not have to change as long as they don't make massively more losses next year, and suddenly their negative impact on the aggregate earnings will change. So just relax, because this is what is called a cycle. That is why actually you don't need governments every day, every morning, every policy, every GST. There's a cycle, and that cycle has turned in India's favor. It got hurt this year because of actually a benefit to India of oil, but obviously that impacts our own and oil and stroke commodities, because it also affects aggregate earnings of our market. But all those things are getting sorted out. We would have, let us say next year also $40 oil, and this year is 40.
Yep.
This year has gone from 100 to 40, and therefore on earnings it looks very bad of that group of companies which are not necessarily directly oil, but let's say oil stroke commodities. Next year 40 to 40, no change in that group, and still it's a very good price to have, and you are set.
Okay.
So you don't need anything, you just need to hang around like this,
Okay.
and suddenly the denominator will be more bearable.